Bennett Kessler filed this story, noting that the Los Angeles Times, NBC News, and even the BBC have reported more details on the vandalism and theft of ancient Paiute Indian petroglyphs from an area in the volcanic tablelands north of Bishop. Now, LA Times reporter Louis Sahagan wrote that at least 4 petroglyphs were cut out of the rock and stolen, and dozens of others were scarred by, quote, hammer strikes and saw cuts, end quote. The Times story says it was visitors who found the vandalism and reported it to the BLM. Now, according to the LA Times, the thieves used ladders, electric generators, and power saws to steal the ancient art. The story says they, quote, gouged holes in the rock and sheared off slabs that were up to 15 feet above ground and 2 feet high and wide. Now, the petroglyphs and the entire area are sacred to the Paiute tribe. On the BBC News website, NBC News US spoke to Raymond Andrews, the Bishop Paiute Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, about the petroglyphs. Andrews said that the ancestors, quote, etched messages in them, so they are sacred. People go and pray to them and try to seek guidance, said Andrews. Now, the story quotes BLM archaeologist Greg Haverstock as saying that there is an illicit market for any archaeological relic, but he estimated the dollar value between $500 and $1,500. Now, Raymond Andrews was also quoted as saying, quote, like other indigenous groups, we believe in karma. Something is going to happen. We can try to investigate, but some things are out of our hands, end quote. Now, in Bishop, BLM has stepped up surveillance of the area and offered a $1,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the thieves. You can call for more information at 760-937-0301. Well, Bennett Kessler also filed this report. Inyomono Advocates for Community Action works to get food to those who need it, manages low-income housing, the Head Start preschool, and other programs. But it was the expanding garden project that has made news. Amaka's Community Services Director Jane McDonald spearheaded Planning for Hope, which bloomed into more than a dozen community gardens and produce swaps. Now, McDonald was inexplicably fired, and those who invested time, money, and land in the popular projects said they were ignored by Amaka and left to wonder about the whole garden project. Now, at a meeting of that agency on November 15th, officials had no explanation for the lack of response to community concerns. They did hold a closed session about McDonald and severed relations with one of the garden project landowners. Now, board members talked about a memorandum of agreement with Dilliker Ranch in Lone Pine, where one of the garden projects had unfolded on donated land. New executive director of Amaka, Lynn Bethel, recommended to the board that Amaka sever relations with the Dilliker Ranch. She described current negotiations with Cole Johnson of the ranch as, quote, not easy. Board member Bill West suggested moving the garden to somewhere in Bishop. Chairman of the board, Raymond Andrews, said he was concerned about severing relations. He said, quote, people in Lone Pine are our neighbors. We need to help them become self-sufficient, he said. Now, Director Bethel is new, he said, and the Lone Pine people, he noted, are our people. We should treat them with respect. Now, Justin Ortega, the newly hired Community Services Director, suggested a different location in Lone Pine. Other officials wanted to know what the consequences would be if Amaka severed ties with Dilliker Ranch. Director Bethel said, quote, more negative and misrepresentative press, and perhaps, she said, Metabolic Studio will not continue funding us. She suggested partnering with Master Gardeners and Altrusa. We can train our own gardener in-house, she said. Now, in days before this meeting, those involved in the Amaka Garden program, the head of Master Gardeners, a minister, a landowner, and a volunteer, commented that they felt ignored by Amaka, unclear about the future of the garden projects, and very disappointed in the loss of Jane McDonald. Now, Director Bethel did not return any of Sierra Wave Media's phone calls and finally emailed vague answers to written questions. Now, board members did not address the publicized comments of citizens, but did vote to sever ties with Dilliker Ranch and the garden there. Director Bethel said she had, quote, repaired relations with Altrusa, another agency that had partnered in the garden project. Now, board member Bill West said he spoke with Reverend Aaron McPhee, who had expressed deep concerns over Amaka's behavior. Well, every November, the state conducts a drill through the County Department of Health, and every year, Inyo and Mono County Public Health Officer Dr. Richard Johnson and his team put together a drill that would be a likely scenario that would happen within the Eastern Sierra. Now, this drill is meant to prepare all of the local partners should an event like this actually take place. Now, this year's drill took place last Thursday in Suite Z of town of Mammoth Lake's offices. It was a functional exercise in which town staff and many others acted out the scenario. Now, the drill this year was based on the scenario of a major earthquake with an eventual loss of power to the Mammoth Lakes area, and Sierra Wave's Cleland Hoff was on hand during that drill. Well, Bennett Kessler also filed this story noting that what is GIS? Well, that stands for Geographic Information Systems. It's about computer software, and GIS applies to computerized maps on just about anything. Now, Inyo County recently organized a GIS day for the public to get a look at what this computer system can do. GIS coordinator Jeff Duncan said the system includes parcel maps, location maps, and maps that identify where the frail and elderly of the county live in case of emergencies. And Bennett Kessler talked to Duncan at GIS Day.
I think the question on most people's minds when they hear GIS is, what the heck is it?
It is it's a computer, a hardware and software that allows you to basically model real-world features and analyze them and use them for inquiries and use them to basically do the job that the county is trying to do it more efficiently. And one way to think of it is maps in the computer, only it's better. Because if you have a paper map, that's a great thing. And if you want to find your house on it, you have to spend a lot of time just visually searching the map for where your house is. With GIS, you have the same data in the computer and it looks like a map, but you have the parcel boundaries. And you can search that parcel for the owner name or the address and immediately zoom to it, because you're using the power of databases attached to, so to speak, the map features to do any sort of analysis you want to do, any sort of interrogation you want to do of the data. And so the county uses it in one obvious application is parcels, because the county has the business of properly assessing these parcels. And behind the parcels you might have aerial photos so you can see all the buildings. You might have building outlines where people have drawn their buildings. There's around on display in our GIS day here are maps of zoning, because people need to know what they can or can't do in terms of building on their property. Another good application of GIS is there's a map here that shows the frail and elderly folks of Inyo County that have registered themselves with Department of Human Services (HHS) to be evacuated in case of an emergency. And we have data on those folks, where they live, and we have data on their condition. Do they need oxygen? Do they need transport? They don't walk at all, and that sort of thing. And that data would be used in emergencies.
What other kinds of things does GIS do, like for instance with the Sheriff's Department?
Well, the sheriff, has a responsibility to respond to all emergencies and to do it in the best possible time. So one thing we're trying to do is create the capability of digitally mapping all addressable structures, and then having, when a call comes in, if it's on a landline, that address is associated with that call, and we want to map that immediately. And that could be, obviously then you have a better idea of where you're going. That could be used to better allocate the cars, in other words, send the closest car to that call. And prevent the idea that the deputy is going to be driving up and down that street slowly with the spotlight looking for that location. He'll be able to find it quicker. And in trying to set up that ability, we've actually uncovered some problems with the data, which we are now fixing. And one of the steps we've taken to fix that data is to hire a firm to visit every addressable structure in the county and confirm its address, so that all the data in 911 will be accurate. And that is ongoing right now. They started on November 5th, and they're working today, and we're monitoring their progress. And so that's an exciting process to really get confidence in the data that we're gonna be mapping. So when we send someone to a certain location, that's the right location.
And if you would like to register to be included in the map of the elderly, contact the health department. We'll be back with a weather report.